Welcome to the latest recording from Last World Boxing. This has been a while in the making. So we've got Jack Gladman joining us, obviously regular on the show. It's nice to drill down a bit further with Jack on all things boxing. So good evening, Jack. Thank you for joining us.
Evening. Not a problem at all.
Yeah, cheers for making time. So let's start at the beginning. We're going to talk boxing career, Jack. I know you had a stellar athletic career as well. But let's start with the boxing. So, how was it that you come into the world of boxing, Jack?
So, I was a boxing fan. I think everyone who watches your show will be a boxing fan. I was a boxing fan, and during lockdown, me and my mate, no one could see each other. One of my other mates had a virtual birthday party. Afterwards, me and my mate stayed on, and they just announced boxing was coming back. If everyone remembers those weird arena shows that were empty, and then Eddie Hearn's back garden and all that.
Yeah.
So that had all just been announced, and so we sort of were chatting about that and fantasy matchmaking. It got down to doing prospects and what would you do with this guy when he turns over, or what would you do with this guy who's just turned over? And I made a comment about, well, the problem is people go from fighting journeyman or road warriors or what have you or foreign imports or whatever to then fighting randomly. They'll be fighting for the Commonwealth title or the British title. The area titles just kind of had died at that point. I think I'm fair saying that, Honor. I think they've only really come back in the last couple of years. And then obviously they existed, but they weren't being used. So, and he was like, well, do something about it then. So initially I looked into being a manager. There's a rule with the Boxing Board of Control where you have to have 3 years experience to be a manager. I believe they brought that in because there was people just getting managers' licenses that really didn't understand boxing. They didn't understand the business. I'm still not sure I understand it, and we're 3 years into it because I'm not sure anyone can. Honestly, there's people who have been in it 25 years, and I'm still not sure they 100% understand it.
The bits that I've seen, Jack, peeling that curtain back on that boxing industry.
Horrible.
It's a horrible industry, right?
Yeah. Everyone's out for themselves to an extent. Don't count, and I'll count myself in this. So don't matter how selfless you are, you got to be working some sort of angle for yourself. Yeah. I mean, I like to look out for my fighters, but I also do want to make money. I'm not gonna sit there and say, look, I don't care if I don't earn a penny. Yeah, obviously I want to earn money.
So how difficult was it to actually approach the Board of Control and become a matchmaker?
So I applied. So I had a bit of a weird one. So I applied during when we were in and out of lockdowns. So that kind of weird period where the first lockdown was over, but was ending, because I think I applied. But then we went through that weird tiers thing, and then it all sort of went a bit weird again, and we went back into lockdown. So mine took a bit longer than it probably should have done. I think I applied in the September, maybe the August, and then didn't hear anything until maybe April.
Right.
April maybe. And then by the time I actually got my license, it was June. But you go through that. So I got a text basically saying, look, we've decided to progress your application. Because you ring the board, you can get a form. Anybody who watches this interview could ring the board tomorrow and get an application form. That doesn't guarantee you'll even get an interview.
Yeah.
There has to be some link within boxing. At the time, I was doing a boxing podcast, which I don't do anymore, just because there could be some conflicts of interest there. And also, I would probably upset someone. I don't mind doing it if I have to, but I'm not going to go out my way to upset.
Not good for business, Jack, right? Not good for business.
Not great for business when it's your full-time job. So then I got involved, became a matchmaker, was doing it alongside an apprenticeship, and eventually it got to the point where the apprenticeship was was not going as well as I'd hoped. I just decided, look, and I actually contacted Lee Eaton and said, look, what do you think? Because done a bit for him before. What do you think I could make a living in boxing? And he went, it'd be hard, but yeah, the level of work you've got, you could possibly do it. So I was like, right, I'm going to go. And I actually sat down, and I remember over 2 days, I did a financial thing and worked out, right, this is what it would cost to live. This is what it would cost to do this. This is how much I want to spend to go to socially. This is what, and basically decided, right, I can just, but basically worked out at roughly what I was earning anyway. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. So I went full time, and then so for the next sort of 2 years, I kind of was full time in boxing, but as a matchmaker. So I literally only worked as a matchmaker. I didn't work as a manager or anything.
And Jack, how do you go about building your reputation? Because I'd imagine that's a blank canvas you're starting from, is it?
Yeah, pretty much. So my first bit, I was basically cold calling people, which, by the way, I wouldn't advise that. If you haven't got a promoter that you're friendly with, probably don't just randomly cold call people. I did it, and I got away with it. But the first promoter I worked with, it didn't work out. I'm not going to say who, but it didn't work out, and I've said that a few times to people. So yeah, I basically cold called, and eventually Lee Eaton. I didn't actually call him. He messaged me and said, "Look, I've got these matches. You've got a matchmaker's license? Do you fancy it?" So I said, "Yeah, all right, I'll give it a shot." And my very first ever fight that I matched was if I don't know if you remember that he only had a few fights, but I think he might be coming back in Dubai actually. A guy called Shiloh De Freitas.
Yep.
That was my very first ever match. Was his pro debut. And Fons Alexander never lets me hear the end of it because he always says that's the best he was ever in with. And I was like, and every time I see him, he goes, "Friends like you, who needs enemies?" Which he may have a point there actually. But so I did that, and then my second ever match was ironically a fighter that's now signed to me, Jordan Barker Porter. Yeah, that didn't go that well that night.
Probably shows you're a bit too good at your job,
Yeah.
Jack, to be honest.
Yeah, I made it look convincing. Unfortunately, the wrong way, but yeah. But I've worked with some good names since, and I won't name drop everyone, but there are people I've worked with where they've gone on to do things. One has gone on to win a world title, but you know it's impressive. Well, I suppose technically two, but one has won a record, a Big Four world title. The other one won the IBO.
And am I right in thinking you was the youngest matchmaker at that time?
Right. So I'm the second youngest ever, but I was the youngest when time licensed by the board, and the person who had the license before, I don't know if they actually ever used it.
Right.
It was Mr. Shalom.
Okay.
So I don't know if he ever actually used it. I think he just had it because sometimes I don't know if this is actually a rule, and I'd need to look into this, but not for me, just curiosity really. I don't know if they'll give you a promoter's license as your first license.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's a rule or not, but that's.
So before we come on to the managerial part of your role, what does a day in the life look like for a matchmaker, Jack? What's a day in the life look like? You don't need to name names, but
everyone else is everyone's is slightly different. But mine, I'm up at 8:30 with the dog, and between 8:30 and 9, I just chill with the dog, and I don't do anything. 9 o'clock, I just start. I normally 8:30 to 9. I'm sort of looking at box rate, just looking to see what's gone on, who's moved, who might make sense for a fight, who doesn't make sense, and things like that. So I then look at that. About 9 o'clock, I'll normally start just to put a few offers out if I've got some fights. In that 8:30 to 9 bit, I'll normally be looking at my own fighters from a managerial side. That's why most people wouldn't be, but I just look because just in case there's something come up that might make sense for one of my own fighters. But the rest, then I just start with proper work. And if somebody rang me at that point, I'll answer.
Yeah.
And I'll give them an answer. But that's basically what it is. I'll then start to put offers out. Sorry, my dog's just going mental. I'll start to put offers out for any fights I've got open that make sense and things like that. So that'll be what I do. That'll go on till about lunchtime. Normally around about that time, I'm starting to get calls about various things where some of the offers I've put out in the morning are now starting to come back in and say, so let's say, pick a random manager. He's in my head because I was talking to him last night. Dave Caldwell.
Yep.
Say I've made an offer to Dave Caldwell. Normally, if it's not a title fight, if it's just like a random 6-rounder, he might come back to me and go, yeah, Jack, I like the fight, but I want a little bit more money. So then I'll go to the promoter and say, look, Dave Caldwell's got this person. They like the fight, but they want a bit more money. Or they might want a percentage of their tickets or whatever. And so you go back and you negotiate with the promoter. Sometimes the promoter will say yes. Sometimes he'll go, look, I'd rather you just go elsewhere. I don't want to pay. Sometimes you'll get managers. I mean, I had one recently. You go through the whole process. They're happy with the money, but then the fighter will turn around and go, yeah, I don't want to fight him.
Right.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like 5 or 6-0 and you're like, well, no one wants to fight you. Like,
so it sounds quite labour intensive, Jack, and it don't always pay fruition, right? It don't always come to fruition, and it must be quite difficult to earn a pound note sometimes.
I mean, some days you earn. So I always say, although I don't actually get paid till the fights happen. I always joke. I always judge it by how much money I would have made in the day per match, and I charge a set amount for everything up to like a 10-rounder. Sometimes I'll charge more for a title fight because, look, if somebody's fighting for a WBA title, they can pay me a bit more money.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to do like that for the same as a 4-rounder because I've got to ring the WBA and say, look, does this make sense? Like Commonwealth and WBA and things like that, you have to get you have to then put fights to the governing bodies to get to say, do you approve them?
And then coming on to the managerial side of it, because obviously you're doing a lot of management work now. So how does that differ from a matchmaker's role, Jack? Is it just more involved with the fighter?
So manager, there's a few major differences, but the major one is how you get paid. Now, as a matchmaker, I get paid by the promoter. So, for example, if you're promoting the show, you have to pay me per match. Some people get paid per show, but I always prefer to get paid per match. So you pay me. The fighter will pay me as the manager. I mean, I'll tell, because I'll advertise a bit here. I will tell people what I do as my standard deal, and there are caveats to that, and it's this in that sometimes it's different with foreign fighters.
Jack, I've heard some eye-watering percentages that some managers are taking off fighters. I've heard some eye-watering percentages.
Yeah. Now, my standard one, is 10%, but the first £1,000 is theirs.
Okay.
So they pay for the opponent, the fight, and then if you get 1,100, I want 100. Beyond that, I want 10% of whatever you earn. So if you make 1110, I'll take the 110. You're still walking away with £1,000. Yeah. If you make less than that, you keep all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. Because it is professional boxing, and you should earn something out of it. Yeah. I'm not saying that. And now other people take more than that. Are there other fighters where I might take 15? Potentially, but there will be a reason for that. It'll either be because
size of the purse, maybe.
Normally, if I'm taking 15, the reason for it will be 5% of that I'll put to one side for them to fight for a title. And so then 10% I'll keep just to live off. But the other 5% is just going, right, this will be over here so that when you're fighting for the title, I can pay for it for you.
And Jack, let's just mark another card while we're at it, because a lot of people think that there's a lot of money sloshing around in small or boxing, and it's anything but right, Jack. I know we all hear about the contracts that AJ's on and Fury's on and that sort of echelons of boxing, but it's very different when you get down to the small all shows, right?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say who it was. I will tell you the most money I've ever paid anyone. And I'll not say who this was.
No.
The most money I have ever paid anyone. Actually, let's take out the ones that were on TV, because there's a couple of TV ones that I've done that person got paid more money. But for a small hall show, the most I've ever paid someone is $7,000.
Right.
Now, there were people I've paid more than that, but that's always either been on TV or a TV company's been paying for it, because sometimes like Matchroom might put a fighter on a show.
Yeah.
And they pay they pay the purse. So if you randomly see, I don't know, I don't want to say him because like he's in my head for a reason. Let's say Dillian White was on a small hall show, but he was signed to Matchroom at the time. Matchroom might pay for Dillian White's opponent.
Yeah.
Just because it's a thing. I don't really know what they get out of that, but I think it just gets their fighter active, and sometimes it dates.
So, Jack, let's just talk about the pitfalls of both matchmaking and managing then. So what would you say the pitfalls are?
Matchmaking wise, if somebody pulls a show, I don't get paid.
Right. And you could
So I could match 12 fights on a show.
Yeah.
And then you could be the promoter and pull the show because your main event's dropped out. And I'm like, well, the other 11 fights on this flipping show, I haven't got paid.
Yeah, and you put weeks and weeks of work into that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it before where somebody's pulled a show on fight week and I've done 9 fights on the show. And I'm like, well, brilliant. I've just spent the last 2 months doing this show. But because the main event went, it was a 10-fight show. Because the main event went, the main event was selling.
And what do out of pocket costs look like there? Like flights, that can rack up to a big number, right?
I mean, that's more a pitfalls of a manager. So I shouldn't be paying that. There is one occasion where I've ended up paying a flight where I shouldn't have, and I don't know why it happened, and I still to this day can't figure it out. I think I've told you off camera before what that situation was, and it just didn't. It still doesn't add up to me to this day why I ended up paying it. And I've had that as a manager. I've then had to pay a flight where my fighter had a medical issue and couldn't fight, and the promoter had already paid for the flight and wouldn't cover it. So it was a case of I had to pay for the flight as the manager.
So how many years have you been in the game now, Jack?
This is, I've done 3 full ones, so this will be the 4th.
Okay, so my next question, from both a matchmaking and a manager perspective, let's start with matchmaker. What would this Jack, who's got near on 4 years experience, advise the new Jack just coming into the industry?
Don't trust everyone. Be careful who you trust, and also don't ever think that helping a new matchmaker or helping a new guy coming in is necessarily 100% in your best interests. Because I made that mistake. I've helped people out who've then gone and taken work off me.
Yeah. And from a manager's perspective, I know that's a bit newer to you, but you still must have some experience. What would you tell a Jack 4 years ago about the management game?
That don't think that you can't go after the big names. Now, I'll say it later on why, or an international. So maybe you won't sign Anthony Joshua, but you may sign an international quicker than you think. Just be genuine with them. And also, don't doubt yourself if a big name comes up, go and have the conversation with them.
Right, good points. And then now moving on to your stable, Jack. Let's finish off with your stable.
Yeah.
So let's talk about where you are at the minute and what you've got coming up from both matchmaking and from a manager's perspective.
Yeah. So my matchmaking perspective, I've got multiple shows. I've got one in Wetherby, one in Bradford, one in Birmingham. Although that one in Birmingham is also got one of my own fighters on. My Irish, former Ireland international Thomas Myers is going to be out December 15th in Birmingham. He will be out and hopefully boxing. Hopefully this will be his last 4-rounder, but I can't guarantee that because it depends on finances and also if he loses, we might keep him at 4-rounders, but I highly doubt he will do.
All that opportunity, isn't it, Jack? It's all that opportunity.
The opportunities come up, so I'd like to step him up to 6 after this show. But he'll be out December 15th and try and move his career on a step further. November 30th, I've got Jordan Barker Porter out. She's no longer in a title fight, unfortunately. Her sponsor pulled out. This is a big part of it. And people think, because you're a manager, you should be able to pay. I can't pay £6,000, £7,000, £8,000 for every fighter. This is a drawback I have of being so young. Some guys can do that. I can get, and I will say this to any fighters that are watching this and they're interested in signing with me. I can't necessarily throw money at you in the way that a bigger name manager can, but I'm not throwing him under the bus. Elite or someone like that could probably put more finance behind you, but I can get you the opportunities, and if you're good enough, we can get you onto a platform where they can back you. They can throw you money behind you. They can do this. I can get you media. I can get you on shows like Last Belliers, and I can get you on like JSM podcasts. I can get you on I can get you opportunities to get exposure, to bring your sponsors out, to get you sponsors. But that's the thing. So unfortunately, she won't be fighting for a title, but she will be out November 30th. On the Job's promotion show in the Sunderland Live Arena. What else? Adam Heppel. Now, he hasn't got a date confirmed yet. There are discussions for a couple of fights in the offing for him. I will be speaking to his trainer tomorrow. So I don't know when this comes out, but I probably will have spoken to him by the time this comes out. But hopefully in the next few days, we will have an announcement for him. So that'll be good. As for new signings, there may be another one. There should be another one in the next few weeks, if not a few more. I mean, there's one I would like to think, assuming everything goes okay with the board and his medical, the end of his medical, that might be done in the next week to 2 weeks. And he's a pro debut, so I'd like to think that he'll be out. There are 2 more who potentially might be out soon enough, I think. There's 2 more that will be going through the medical process, and hopefully, but they are to go on the road, those 2.
Right.
They'll be my first 2 road warriors. And then, other than that, I think it's more a case of anyone who wants to get in touch, please do. We'll have a conversation at the very least.
Yep. So, Jack, I'll finish it there, fella. What I'll do, I'll put all your social media contacts in below the video.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me time this evening. Much appreciated. Good luck with everything that you're doing. I look forward to having you on the show again tomorrow night. Thank you for giving us your time. Thanks for talking to Last World Boxing. Take care.